Hey guys, this time we're diving into a horror movie that will definitely send chills down your spine at night. Imagine, you've just moved into a new house, overjoyed to welcome your first child. But behind all that happiness, something sinister lurks in the shadows, watching your every move, waiting for your baby. This film slowly unravels a terror that tightens its grip with every scene. Who exactly is Asih? And why is she so obsessed with newborn babies? Watch until the end, and you'll understand why you should always keep your doors tightly closed after this. Okay, without further ado, let's get straight to the point. And if you like this channel, as always, please subscribe so you don't miss any other interesting videos from latest movie stories. The film begins with a woman named Asih carrying her baby, the result of an illicit relationship she had while working in the city, walking through heavy rain as thunder rumbles. When she arrives at a small, rundown hut, no one knows what's going through Asih's mind. She suddenly bathes her baby in the middle of the night while softly singing a lullaby. Crazy. Asih not only bathed her baby in the middle of the night, but also drowned the innocent child in a basin. Then, Asih, with a sorrowful face, slowly leaves the miserable hut. It becomes clear that she has completely lost her sanity, believing that she is still holding and soothing the spirit of her drowned baby. When she arrives at an old banyan tree, she gently lays what she believes to be her baby's spirit beside a rock. Then, using a stainless steel comb, the deranged Asih decides to end her own life so she can live with her baby in another realm. Tragically and sinfully, Asih dies there, after committing 3 unforgivable sins in one night. The next morning, the scene shifts to a beautiful pregnant woman named Ida. With the help of her mother-in-law, Marnie, she's seen preparing a baby crib, excitedly getting everything ready for the arrival of her baby, due in just 1 month. Meanwhile, outside, Ida's husband, Andy, surprises her with an old, worn-out baby stroller. Even though it's outdated, the devoted wife, Ida, looks genuinely happy and grateful for the thoughtful gesture. As night falls, time passes quietly. Somehow, they forget to bring in the laundry until late at night. When they return home, Andy sees his wife taking down the laundry in the dark and immediately warns her that what she's doing is taboo. At that moment, his mother-in-law apologized, saying she forgot to bring the laundry. It turned out that Marnie, now elderly, was starting to experience dementia. As they sat down for dinner, Andy casually mentioned that it was his turn to take care of the neighborhood. Despite the pouring rain, Andy didn't want to be fined by the neighborhood leader, so he reluctantly went to do his duty. Just as Ida was about to go to sleep, she was shocked when the electricity in her house suddenly went out, just as the door creaked open. In the midst of the strange events happening, Ida, who's starting to feel a chill run down her spine, quickly rushes back into the house. But without her realizing it, mysterious footprints have already entered her home first. Ida suddenly panics when she sees her water breaking, even though her due date is still a month away. A short while later, a midwife named Seka rushes in, trying her best to help Ida, who is now moments away from giving birth. Although the baby was born prematurely at 8 months, she was healthy. The next morning, Andy, who works as a civil servant at the sub-district office, prepared to return to work. Before leaving, he lovingly said goodbye to Ida and their newborn daughter, whom they named Amelia. A few moments later, Grandma Marnie asked Ida for permission to take baby Amelia outside to sunbathe in the yard. As the sun grew hotter, Marnie quickly brought Amelia back inside the house. Meanwhile, after finishing hanging the laundry, Ida hurried to check on her daughter. Ida was instantly shocked when she saw her baby still lying under the scorching sun. In the middle of her confusion, Marnie insisted that she had already taken Amelia inside to rest in the shade. Hearing that, Ita realized that her mother-in-law's forgetfulness was getting worse. A few moments later, Marnie, who was choosing medicines, suddenly looked confused when she heard the faint sound of a lullaby from outside.
Ita.
In the middle of her confusion, Marnie asked Ita if she had heard the same strange humming. But Ita looked puzzled by what her mother-in-law was talking about. Later that afternoon, after checking on baby Amelia's condition, the midwife, Sekar, brought a small gift. A doll that once belonged to her own daughter, who had now grown up and no longer needed it. As they chatted, Sekar shared several tips and taboos that Ita should be careful about. She warned that newborn babies often have a sweet scent that can attract supernatural beings. Sekar also told Ita to avoid placing the baby's crib near the window, since such a thing was believed to invite the presence of a female spirit. Not stopping there, Sekar, who loved to gossip, went on to share a horrifying story from the neighboring village, where, just days ago, a woman had ended her life under an old banyan tree after drowning her own baby in a basin. For safety, Sekar advised Ida to keep a pair of scissors under her pillow, saying it would ward off evil spirits. According to local beliefs, the ghost of a mother who took her own life after killing her child could transform into a kuntilanak, a vengeful female specter.
Suara ketukan tiang listrik di malam setan tidak berani dekat-dekat. Ya, mana teh jasadnya nggak tahu.
A moment later, Ida noticed an antique comb lying on the floor. Without thinking much, she picked it up, unaware that the comb once belonged to Asih, the cursed spirit who had taken her own life. That night, Andy curiously asked Ita why she kept a pair of sewing scissors under their pillow. Ita calmly explained that it was for protection, from evil spirits that might try to disturb them. Hearing that, Andy couldn't help but be puzzled. He told her that reciting verses from the Quran would be far more powerful than relying on a pair of scissors. However, Ita stubbornly insisted, saying there was nothing wrong with taking extra precautions.
Tapi perasaanku hari ini tidak enak.
A few moments later, Ida asked her husband to bury Amelia's placenta, which had been left for 2 days without being buried. How careless. Wouldn't it start to smell? Realizing his mistake, Andy immediately rushed outside to bury it. Seeing that Ida's breast milk wasn't flowing much, Marnie advised her daughter-in-law to eat more katuk leaves and not to overthink things.
Kamu sudah makan?
Moments later, Marnie hurried to perform the Isha prayer. In her confusion, Marnie thought she saw someone pass by and tried to confirm it with Ida. However, Ida, believing her mother-in-law's dementia was worsening, simply excused herself to rest. Meanwhile, in the bedroom, Ida, worried about her mother-in-law's worsening dementia, told Andy about it. However, because his mother was elderly, Andy asked his wife to be more understanding. Meanwhile, Marnie, who was reciting her prayers, suddenly experienced something strange. Astaghfirullah! She screamed in shock as the ghostly figure of Asih shouted right into her ear. In a panic, the forgetful Marnie hurriedly grabbed a notebook to write down everything she had just experienced. In the middle of the night, Ida tries to calm Amelia, who suddenly starts crying. Amidst these strange occurrences, she becomes even more panicked when she sees the rocking chair start moving on its own. Astaghfirullah. Once again, Asih appeared with her terrifying face, delivering another horrifying jump scare. The next morning, Ida immediately told her husband about the strange things she had experienced. She then asked Andy to call the local ustaz as soon as possible. However, Andy simply told her to get more rest instead. Ida eventually assumed that what she had experienced was just a hallucination caused by exhaustion. A few moments after putting her baby to sleep, Ida decided to take a rest. However, just as she was about to close her eyes, she suddenly panicked, hearing a strange noise coming from inside the closet. Like an Annabelle-style terror, Asih suddenly leaped out from inside the closet. That night, while showing her mother-in-law's notes, Ida once again tried to convince her husband about the ghostly terror they had been experiencing. However, despite everything, Andy, the most open-minded civil servant, still refused to believe her.
Kamu percaya kan, Ah?
In the middle of the night, when Andy was drinking in the kitchen, Andy suddenly became confused when he heard the incessant chirping of chicks from the direction of the yard. Andy was utterly shocked when he saw Asih's ghost feasting on her child's placenta. After experiencing this extreme terror from Asih's spirit, Andy finally believed. The next morning, while Ida was bathing her baby in rice water, she experienced another strange occurrence. Wait! Where did she go? Amelia! Ita panicked, trembling with fear as her daughter suddenly vanished into the rice water. Turns out, the baby had been kidnapped by Asih, whose jealousy and vengeful nature knew no bounds. Not long after their daughter went missing, Andy revealed that the police were processing the report. However, Ita insisted that Amelia had been kidnapped by a supernatural being. Since Pa Ustaz was away on pilgrimage, Ita asked her husband to visit Abba Idi, who was knowledgeable about the paranormal. That night, whether it was a sign or not, Abba Idi, with his mystical skills, began drawing the ancient banyan tree, the same one where Asih had shortened her lifespan. Not only that, but he also sketched a figure of Asih carrying Ita's baby. A few moments later, a panicked Andy rushed to ask for Abba Idi's help in finding their daughter, who had been abducted by a ghostly entity. Upon returning home, Abba Idi revealed that Amelia had been taken by a spirit more vile than the Kuntilanak, a being named Asih.
Namanya Kasih.
Asih, a woman who made poor choices after moving to the city, faced rejection from her family when she returned with a baby from an out-of-wedlock relationship. She was considered a disgrace by the community. In her desperation, Asih, having lost her way, ultimately chose to end her life under an old banyan tree after drowning her innocent baby in a basin. Abba Idi added that Asih now desires Ita's baby as a replacement for the child she had killed. It's a strange and unsettling situation. Abba Idi further explained that Asih had been targeting Ita even before she gave birth, having set her sights on the baby from the very beginning. From his vision, Abba Idi revealed that Ita had unknowingly kept an item belonging to Asih. Upon hearing this, Ita quickly rushed to retrieve the comb she had found some time ago.
Sekarang saya butuh lilin.
A few moments after obtaining Asih's belongings, Abba Idi immediately began a ritual to summon Asih's spirit. After removing his glasses, Abba Idi, hearing Asih's haunting song, urged them to strengthen their prayers. Meanwhile, he would continue the search. Realizing that Asih's spirit had left, Abba Idi immediately urged Andy to go to the ancient banyan tree. Upon arriving at the tree, Abba Idi instructed Andy to recite the call to prayer, Adhan.
Allahu Akbar. Asyhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah.
Hearing this, Abba Idi revealed, "Your child is behind the banyan tree." By the grace of Allah, they were able to find Amelia.
Sama Abah berhasil menemukan Amelia.
Once they arrived home, Andy, who was about to take Abba Idi back, handed over their daughter to Ida, who was sitting on a chair wearing a mukina. "Let Ita and Amelia rest for now," he said. However, Abba Idi immediately panicked when he heard Ita singing in a manner resembling Asih. Realizing that Ita had been possessed by Asih's spirit, Abba Idi demanded that the spirit of Asih release Ita and her baby. However, the spirit of Asih clearly ignored his plea, continuing its hold over Ita. And when Ita, the possessed, suddenly disappeared, Abba Idi urged them to go to the back. Once again, Asih, the vengeful spirit, tried to drown the baby Aita in a basin. At that moment, Abba Aidi and his family worked together to wake Aita, urging her to resist the influence of Asih, the evil spirit. "Leave this body, leave yourself!" Abba Aidi exclaimed. Allahu Akbar. Finally, Ita was able to break free from Asih's influence. Moments later, Andy thanked Abba Aidi for saving his family from Asih's terror. Before leaving, Abba Aidi asked Marni to stick Asih's comb under the old banyan tree, the place where Asih had committed suicide.
Harus bisa memaafkan Asih.
The film begins with a 7-year-old girl named Risa. She always feels lonely because she doesn't have any friends. Her mother, Ellie, is pregnant and very busy with her job as a teacher, while her father works abroad and only comes home every 6 months. Every day, Risa stays at her grandmother's house, accompanied by Mang Ujang, the gardener who works there. Coincidentally, today is Risa's 8th birthday. Since her mother hasn't come home yet, Risa ends up celebrating her birthday alone. She doesn't ask for anything. What she truly wishes for is just to have a friend to play with. After blowing out the candle, Risa suddenly hears someone singing a song. Moments later, she sees 3 boys around her age playing hide-and-seek. Risa tells them that she wants to join, and soon they all start playing together. It was getting late. Ellie had just returned home with a birthday present for Risa. He heard noises downstairs.
Risa?
When he checked, he was shocked to see a mess of toys and lots of scribbles on the floor. Ellie thought it was Risa's doing. He immediately went into Risa's room, but saw that Risa was already asleep, so he left the room. It turned out that it wasn't Risa who was messing around, but a third friend, Peter, William, and Jensen. The next morning, Ailey gives Risa her birthday present. She reminds Risa that now she's a big girl, so after playing she should clean up her toys and stop drawing on the floor. Risa insists that it wasn't her who did that. When she checks again, the floor is suddenly clean, and all the drawings have completely disappeared. Since the arrival of the 3 boys, Risa's life has become much more colorful. The 3 often sing the song Boneka Abdi. Risa asks where they learned that song since it's a Sundanese song, and Peter doesn't look Sundanese. Peter replies that their maid taught it to them, and indeed, he isn't Sundanese. Mang Ujang, who saw Risa playing alone, suddenly felt terrified and shivered uncontrollably. The 4 of them played tag, running around until they reached a large tree near Risa's grandmother's house. Peter, William, and Jensen warned Risa not to go near that tree. Then suddenly, they all ran away. That night, Risa suddenly began to sing the song Boneka Abdi. Her mother asked where she had learned it from. Risa calmly replied that she learned it from her new friends. After that, Risa went straight to bed. Meanwhile, Ilya was finishing her work when Mang Ujang came by. Ilya asked if he knew who Risa's new friends were. Mang Ujang replied that Risa had always liked playing alone. He then suggested that Eli call Abba Asep, a spiritual expert who was well known for dealing with supernatural matters. Mang Ujang recommended it because he feared the house might be haunted. He often saw Risa playing and laughing by herself. Finally, Ailey called her friend Shinta, who was a psychiatrist. Suddenly, Shinta felt something touch her leg. When she looked down under the table, she saw Risa hiding there. Ailey asked what she was doing, and Risa replied that she was playing hide-and-seek with her friends. Her mother then said that she wanted to see Risa's friends.
Jensen, William, ayo keluar.
Seeing that, Shinta wasn't sure she could treat Risa. She felt that what Risa was experiencing wasn't a psychological problem. Ellie, who was already confused and desperate, immediately called Abba Asep to help cure Risa. Meanwhile, Risa asked why she was the only one who could see the 3 of them. Peter replied that not everyone could see them. "So, you're not my neighbors?" Risa asked. They all shook their heads. Peter then explained that he was born and raised in Indonesia. His parents were killed by the Nippon soldiers, the Japanese who had just arrived in the country, and he too was murdered by them in this very house. The same thing happened to William and Jensen. They were also killed here. After that, Jensen asked, "Are you afraid of us, Risa?" Risa shook her head and replied, "No, I want to be friends with you forever.
Aku mau sama kalian terus. Selamanya.
Meanwhile, Abba Asep sensed a very strong negative aura inside the house. He told Ailey to find Risa immediately, and fortunately, Ailey wasn't too late. She saw Risa about to jump down, struggling as she insisted that she wanted to go with her friends, saying they were real and truly existed.
Aku mau sama mama.
Abba Asep explained that Risa had a special gift. After examining her ribs, he discovered that Risa had a gap between them, something rare. He warned that children like her should never be left alone or allowed to daydream too often. Abba Asep then covered Risa's eyes and asked her to focus on the smells around her. "Do you smell that?" he asked. "That strong scent. You've been smelling it since you met your 3 friends. It's the scent of Danur, the scent of death." He then revealed the true forms of Peter, William, and Jensen to Risa. Risa screamed in terror and fainted. From that day on, Risa deeply regretted opening her spiritual eye, and she never saw her ghost friends again. 9 years later, Risa has grown into a teenage girl and now has a younger sister named Riri. Risa's mother had to go to work out of town, so Risa and her younger sister Riri stayed at their grandmother's house. Their grandmother was ill from a stroke, and Risa was assigned to care for her until a nanny sent by Aunt Tina arrived.
Tante Eli?
Ri, nunggu lama ya?
Here, Risa was also accompanied by Aunt Tina's son, named Andre.
Pagi Tuan Putri, cantik banget kamu.
Yaudah.
Risa remembered that she used to be friends with Peter, William, and Jensen, and she also recalled how she often played the piano at her grandmother's house.
Dulu ya.
Riri was playing around the yard when she stopped near a large old banyan tree. While playing, she accidentally found a comb. Riri then used it to brush her doll's
Bentar
hair.
ya.
That night, the sky grew dark and thunder rumbled. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door. When Risa went to check, no one was there. But moments later, a woman quietly walked into the house. She introduced herself as Asih, saying she had been sent by Aunt Tina to take care of Risa's grandmother. Risa asked to confirm, "So you're the nurse Aunt Tina mentioned?" And Asih nodded softly. Riri, looking happy, immediately invited Asih to play with her. The two sat together, gently brushing each other's hair. The next morning, Asih was feeding Riri. It was clear that Asih had a deep fondness for children. After Riri finished eating, Risa asked Asih to help feed her grandmother as well. However, instead of responding, Asih just stared intensely at Risa, her eyes cold and unsettling. The two of them went into the grandmother's room. Risa told her grandmother that if she needed anything, she could just call Asih for help. Risa then carefully explained which medicines her grandmother needed to take, but as she spoke, her grandmother's face looked tense and troubled, as if something was deeply bothering her. That afternoon, Riri was playing hide-and-seek with Asih. Meanwhile, Risa received a phone call from her mother, who asked why Riri kept shouting Asih's name. Her mother sounded confused and asked, "Risa, who's Asih?" Risa replied, "Isn't she the nurse Aunt Tina sent for Grandma?" But her mother immediately said that Aunt Tina hadn't sent anyone yet and hadn't even contacted her. Before Risa could respond, the call suddenly got cut off when the sound of her grandmother's bell rang loudly from the room. Risa rushed over and saw her grandmother struggling, terrified, as if trying to fight something off. Panicked, Risa called out for Asih to help. But instead, her grandmother grew even more frightened at the mention of that name. After her grandmother finally calmed down, Risa was able to leave the room. She immediately went to look for Riri, but couldn't find her anywhere. Then, she heard a woman's voice singing the song Boneka Abdi. Step by step, she followed the source of the sound.
Asih? Riri?
And to her shock, the woman singing Boneka Abdi was Asih, who was bathing Riri. After that, she quickly left the bathroom. Suddenly, Risa was startled by Andri's arrival, who had just returned from his college. At night, Andri saw Riri sleepwalking. He quickly took Riri back to her room, and on the wall, a shadow of Asih appeared. But Asih wasn't actually there. The next day, Andri saw Risa searching online about the signs of people who can see ghosts. Andri said that he had read in an article that if you want to see a ghost, you should squat, bend over, and look between your legs. He admitted that he had tried this method before, but had never actually seen a ghost.
Terus dalam posisi terbalik, lo lihat di antara.
After that, Andy asked why Riri was playing alone. Andri suggested that Risa should play with Riri more often, worried that Riri might feel lonely. But in reality, Riri was playing with Asih, who Andy couldn't see. While she was performing her prayers, Risa was being haunted by Asih's ghost. Accidentally, Andri dropped his spoon. While crouching, he saw a female ghost between his legs and was utterly shocked with fear. Later, Andri tried to eat his meatballs calmly outside the house, but he saw Asih again on his grandmother's bedroom balcony. After checking, he didn't find anyone and panicked because his grandmother was already downstairs struggling. Andri immediately shouted for Risa, and together they tied up his grandmother and tried to calm her down. Meanwhile, Riri was taken by Asih to a large tree near the house. Terrified, Riri begged to go home, but Asih grabbed her hand tightly. Just as their grandmother had calmed down, Risa and Andri suddenly heard Riri's terrified screams. They immediately searched for Riri, checking every corner of the house, but she was nowhere to be found. As they continued looking for her, they were suddenly haunted by the ghost of Asih. In the end, Andri lost consciousness, and his body became stiff. Terrified and confused, Risa quickly called her mother, crying that Asih had taken Riri. She begged her mother to come home immediately because she didn't know what else to do. Unwilling to give up searching for her little sister, Risa tries to think of a way to save her. Gathering her courage, she decides to summon her childhood ghost friends by singing the song Boneka Abdi.
Peter.
At last, Peter, William, and Jensen appeared. They smiled and said, "Risa, you've grown up." After 9 years, none of their ghostly forms had changed at all.
Peter.
Her friends tell Risa that Riri is no longer in this world. She has been taken to the spirit realm. To bring her back, Risa must go there herself. Peter, William, and Jensen promise to help her enter the supernatural world.
Dia menginginkan adikmu. Adikmu bukan yang pertama. Kami akan menemani.
Risa then closed her eyes, placed her hands against the wall, and began counting from 1 to 10.
2.
With the help and guidance of her 3 ghost friends, Risa finally managed to enter the spirit realm. There, she found Riri being held tightly by Asih inside a bathtub. Moments later, they were both pulled and submerged into the water. Meanwhile, Risa's mother arrived home with Abba Asep. When Abba Asep picked up the comb that Riri had found near the big tree, he immediately received a vision. He saw the tragic past of Asih, once a mother who had a child out of wedlock. The villagers mocked and insulted her, calling her a wicked and immoral woman, while her child was cruelly labeled as illegitimate because no one knew who the father was. Driven to the brink of madness by the constant humiliation, Asih drowned her own baby. Overwhelmed by guilt and grief, she later took her own life by slitting her wrist with her comb under that same big tree. Since then, Asih's tormented spirit has wandered the earth, forever seeking to steal other people's children as replacements for the baby she lost. Abba Asep immediately instructed Ellie to place the comb near the big tree. With all her effort, she immediately went and stuck the comb into the ground. Little by little, Riri's body emerged from the bathtub. Risa, with the help of her 3 friends, pulled Riri out, and she was successfully rescued. After returning home, Ellie found both of her children in the bathroom. In the end, they all agreed to move out of the house, but Risa promised that she would never forget her ghostly friends. At the end of the film, a small child is seen playing near a large tree, and the child takes Asih's comb, and the story ends. And that's the storyline of the film Danur. Beyond the scares, this movie carries a very important message. Friendship has its limits, and never play around with a world you don't fully understand. The takeaway from this film: don't be afraid to face your own loneliness, because seeking comfort in the wrong place can bring even greater danger. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoy discussions about Indonesian horror films based on true stories, don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel. See you in the next story.